Hello and welcome back to the Darling Academy. I have a domestic science class for you today because we're going to be cooking. Now, I'm not sure if you can tell, but I have a few ingredients that look like they might turn into soup. Now, this recipe is incredibly simple, but it's also incredibly special, and I shall tell you why. A couple of weeks ago, I sent out some messages to some friends and also some of my friends on Instagram for them to share with me some family recipes, tried and tested ones that they love and they keep returning to again and again because it has a special connection with them, or their family just absolutely go mad for it. And my friend Debbie, who is a very talented sculptor, came up trumps with this recipe. It's a little bit unusual in the fact that I'm not sure we would necessarily think of watercress soup in, modern day. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? But I don't think I've ever eaten watercress soup, so this is going to be an experiment. But the reason why I jumped at this one is because it has a very, very special story behind it. Now, Debbie's husband used to be a minister in the RAF, and back in 1985 they were based at RAF, Wittering, that's it, I keep forgetting it. And Tim, who is her husband, was obviously the minister there, very involved in kind of social life and spiritual life of everybody on base. And at that time, their honorary Air Commodore was Princess Diana. Now, Tim managed to meet Diana and said that she was incredibly lovely and didn't want to fuss despite having a terrible cold. Now, makes me feel like a princess because I've got a bit of a cold coming on, so I'm hoping Diana's recipe might make me feel a bit better because I know that watercress is incredibly nutritious. Now, the wives at RAF Wittering used to get together quite a lot and fundraise, and in 1985 they got all of the wives together to submit their favourite recipes for a charity cookbook. And who should they ask but Princess Diana herself to also submit a recipe. Now, this cookbook is the original. It's looking a bit tired, and I'm not surprised given it is still here with us from 1985, which happens to be the year I was born, so this book looks how I feel. It's a little bit gone in the spine, a little bit tired around the edges, but it's hopefully full of lovely things. I don't know, bad analogy, Alena, let's move on. So Princess Diana submitted her recipe for watercress soup. So it says, by kind permission of HRH, the Princess of Wales, Honorary Air Commodore, RAF Wittering. Now, I'll do a close-up of this because I've got to be very gentle with it, but it's got incredibly few ingredients. So we have some butter and some flour to make a roux. We have a pint of chicken stock and it says 6 ounces. I have converted these measurements on my blog, so if you want to make it yourself, go to thedarlingacademy.com and find the corresponding blog post because I have put them into metric and American equivalent conversions for you. So, and all this watercress, there is also some single cream to finish off the soup once you've blended it, but I've kept that in the fridge just because I didn't want it to spoil. So I wanted to share this with you, but just because of the connection with Princess Diana. We see so much of the public facing thing, but there's something really behind the scenes about this. I'm not sure whether she would have cooked it herself or whether maybe she asked a chef to give her the recipe, but regardless, it really touched me when Debbie gave me this recipe because she also cooks this for dinner parties, so I just love the connection. So without further ado, I'm probably going to move you closer in so that you can see what I'm doing in order to cook this. And then if you stick around to the end, there will also be a little bit of soup etiquette for you. So we're not talking fine dining soup etiquette, we're talking about general soup etiquette, which we could all use a little help with, I can imagine. So hands washed, hair up, aprons on, let's cook. We need to melt our butter. Right, we need to get our butter melting. Not too high a heat, you want it kind of medium high. otherwise it will start to burn the butter and the flour rather than you're making a roux essentially. So our butter is almost there. And then I'm going to sprinkle in the flour. Don't worry about sifting it, just sprinkle it all in quite evenly. And we need to now cook this out into a bit of a roux. So what this does is this acts as a way to thicken the soup. So wait till it's kind of all combined. I don't know if you can see here, this roux, it's nice and loose. And then, bit by bit, we're going to add the chicken stock, little bit at a time, which will further loosen the roux. I'd say maybe half a cup at a time. Now this is a pint of chicken stock. The original recipe does say warmed, but I am working with a portable hob here, so we will just spend a bit longer warming it through as it cooks. You'll also notice in this recipe that there is no seasoning, and that is because the sodium from the chicken stock and the pepperiness of the watercress do the seasoning for you. Now you can always add it at the end or allow your guests to season their own. Halfway there, a bit more. Now the consistency is getting there. There aren't any huge lumps to contend with. I want to add a bit more at the time to make sure it's all incorporated nicely and is warming through. Oops. I don't know if you can see the colour of this. We were working with clear chicken stock, and now this is quite creamy. But as you can imagine, once we've blended it with the watercress, it's probably going to be very green. So that looks nice. I'm just going to turn the heat up ever so slightly, just to get the heat in before we add the watercress. And the instructions say cook slowly until the stalks are soft, stirring occasionally. This will take about 20 minutes. So what we'll do is we'll put the watercress in once this is up to a nice warm temperature, and then pop the lid on and allow it to simmer gently for about 20 minutes. So make sure as well, I've already set mine aside, but it also says at the end of the instructions that you can garnish with a little bit of watercress at the end on top of your soup. So set aside some to garnish. And now we will pop in, try and spread it out equally. Gosh, this does seem a lot, but I've done my measurements correctly. I suppose much like spinach, it will wilt down over time. You can already hear it bubbling slightly. So I'll just push that down ever so slightly. There we go, it's already wilting underneath the water, underneath the stock, sorry. You can see it's reducing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reduce this down to a low to medium heat. And then I'm going to pop the lid on and allow it to simmer for 20 minutes. I'll set my timer, and then every 5 minutes or so I'll come back and just give it a little stir. isn't working out very well. I would say that the blender is better for this than a stick blender. I've splattered a few bits everywhere. Immersion blenders aren't that great for this very reason. Right, I should think that's enough because we're going to pass it through a fine sieve as well. Could you imagine this? I don't know if you can see it, but could you imagine that in your teeth? There are so many small bits of, very many small bits of green. Fun for a dinner party. Just shows how, would show how confident you were to try and pass off green in your teeth as something fashionable. Right, so we're going to allow that to cool now, then I'm going to pass it through a fine sieve and then add some cream and bring it slowly back up to an edible temperature. Okay, so it's cooled quite significantly now. There's still a little bit of heat in it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to strain it now through this fine mesh sieve. So, and hopefully that's to catch all the green bits, which I can't imagine many people at your dinner party would enjoy having those caught in their teeth. This is going through quite slowly, so if you've got a, I think they're called a mouli or something, one of those French ones, that will probably be a good bet to get it all to go through quicker for you. I'm not sure about the quantities of this actually. It must be a very small quantity of soup per person because I can't imagine we're going to get a lot out of this. Perhaps enough for 2. And I think the recipe, oh there we go, the recipe serves 3, that's why. Okay, so if you're having more people for your dinner party, I suggest doubling up on all quantities in order to serve a hungry crowd. Right, I'm going to try and put the last of it in. It does smell nice, I must admit. It's probably the butter in the chicken stock that smells good. Right, we'll try and get the last of that through, and then I think for tasting purposes we might serve up. Pop that in there and then add a bit of cream. I'm going to go and get actually the table setter. I'm going to set the table and we'll do it then. Right, so I'm going to add a little bit of the cream now, as the recipe suggests. Now, according to the recipe, half of this goes into, I don't know if you can see, but this is to serve 3. I'm not going to put that much in because I don't think the quantity worked out that well. I will put some revisions on the blog probably before I post this video, just to I think, I don't know, there's just something about it. Much a brighter green. I don't know if you can see that. That looks nice. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ladle that into my soup bowl, and you can, as Diana's recipe states, well, I think this would go as far as 3 people. Depends how creamy you like things, I suppose. So we'll set that aside. She did say that you can drizzle a little bit of cream for garnish, so we'll do that. Oh, okay, that didn't stay at the top. And then, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit of spare watercress. And there we have it. So I'm going to sit down and see what this tastes like. So here we go, Princess Diana's watercress soup. What I love about this especially is that Debbie has given me a set of her wedding china to use, which is, I think they were married in 1984 or about that time. So the reason they picked it is it's got RAF colours, and this is, I believe, it's Sherbrooke by Royal Doulton. So I just think it's lovely. So I think before we try the soup, I'll just explain a few little things about soup etiquette. Your bread plate will always be here to the top left. and your drinks glass is to the top right. Now if you make that kind of symbol or that sign with your fingertips, you will notice here is a B and here is a D. So your drinks to your right, your bread plate to your left at the top. If you want to enjoy some bread with your soup, you never ever cut the bread. All you do is you would break a piece apart. Now some people do drop their bread in like tiny little croutons, which is perfectly acceptable, but what we don't do is dunk with our fingers. So if you wanted to drop a crouton in, you would drop it in with a crouton and then you would eat it, pick it up with the spoon and then put it in your mouth. Nor do we clean our bowl with the bread. You can just eat, you know, as you go with your finger, that's fine. If you wanted to enjoy some butter with it, there might be a communal butter or you might have an individual butter. Regardless, what you need to do is you need to take the amount, I've done a big piece for illustration purposes, and then you would decant that onto your plate so that you're not essentially double dipping from your bread with your knife and crumbs into the communal butter nor into the little side dish. So take it out from the little dish, put it on your plate, and then what you do is you take your little bite and you don't spread and slather your bread roll. What you do is you take a tiny bit of butter, hopefully it's warm, most restaurants serve them cold now, which is annoying because you can't spread it. So then you spread that bit and then that's what you do, you would eat it, or you can dunk it like a crouton. Now there are specific soup spoons, and you'll note that these ones are rounded, and you might be given in informal dining situations or informal restaurants a pointed spoon. The reason why these have been invented is that it's easier to kind of sip from the side of the spoon, because most people, these types of spoons, they tend to want to put it straight into the mouth, whereas these rounded bowls of soup are easier to sip from the side, and that's what we do. Okay, so when you're trying the soup for the first time, what you do is you scoop away from you in the bowl. You don't try and scoop it towards you, because what you do is you invite splashes and that's never going to go well. So what you do is you scoop away and then you take the spoon up ever so slightly, and if you feel it's dripping from underneath, you can run it along the ridge of the bowl away from you, and what that will do is run down back into the bowl. Never try and blow on it if it's too hot, just sit and be patient, because blowing on it again is going to create a mess. So what you do is you sip quietly, don't inhale the soup, but just pour it ever so gently into your mouth like so, and actually that's quite delicious. I wasn't expecting it to be quite as nice for some reason. Also, I'll make a note about soup bowls. Soup bowls are generally quite shallow, such as this one, so that helps to cool, you know, the soup quite quickly, because it's the first course generally and you don't want it to remain scalding hot and sitting in a deep bowl. Some soups have a flat edge as well, so if you're going to be running your spoon along the top to try and catch any drips, try and do it where the bowl, that angle meets the rim of the plate, the soup plate. I'm just going to have a bit more because actually it's really nice. That's actually really good. Now, if you wanted to take a rest whilst you're eating your soup to perhaps have a drink or something, if you've been given a soup plate, it's quite acceptable to put your spoon on the soup plate. Never put it on the tablecloth or the placemat, because that's only going to dirty it. If your bowl is shallow, then you can also leave it within the bowl. That's quite acceptable. Generally at a 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock position, so that you don't start knocking it. If the bowl you've been given, say if you're eating an Asian dish and the bowl is quite tall, that's going to be very hard. You're going to have to decide, unless there's a charger or a soup plate underneath, you're going to have to decide to take the risk. If I was eating in a restaurant and I had finished my soup, I would then tuck my spoon here so that the waiter could take it from me. If I was to leave that and then he's going to try it would just make a clattery mess. So that's what we do. So I hope that's answered any etiquette questions you might have about soup. If you have any more, please do let me know in the comments below or email me. And if you'd like to take part and submit a recipe for me to cook, much in this format, you know, something that you love to cook yourself, or it's an old family favourite that you think that readers of the Darling Academy would enjoy, do please email that to me. And if it doesn't look too ridiculously complicated or off the wall, I will try it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I'll be honoured. Just press the subscribe button and the little notification bell. And also, if you would like to keep up with our newsletter, go to thedarlingacademy.com and sign up. I send a monthly digest of posts and videos, including recipes, housekeeping tips and etiquette tips. It would be lovely to have you part of the community. Have a great day.